I've heard that men and a woman, they differ in that the woman will tend to be more, I don't know, emotional. They just want to express themselves. They're not really looking for a solution. And then the guy will tend to.
Yeah.
So in this case, then, is it for men who would tend to kind of like give a practical advice or whatever? Is it still also related to their own samskara, or just is a biological wiring that male has?
That's a good question. I think it's probably both. We definitely had to set us, because if you're a man and you've been conditioned by your samskaras of what a man is, what man wants to sit around and listen to a woman cry? It's like, oh my God, I mean, really. I know, I have a lot of male clients, so don't pretend, I know. So it's like, oh my, just talk to your girlfriends and come back when you're ready to be normal, So that's not how men are wired. That's what I'm saying. I think it's biological too. It's part of the testosterone. It's part of being a man. Even actually women. I'm learning now. I'm reading about menopause. When women get into menopause, they have a lot less estrogen. Estrogen is the female hormone. When that hits rock bottom, watch the Ferrari come out of the garage. Women are more intense, with the chemicals. The estrogen goes down and they have more testosterone and they're more like, they get more angry. They're having a different. So a lot of it is just the chemicals. Haribol and welcome. So let's get into our favorite topic, toxic parents. So we're moving right along with our toxic parents. And does anybody have anything that came up for you over the week that we talked about last week that you might want to? I know sometimes we forget what we even talked about. Did anything come up last week that you thought about since our last reading? It's hard to remember what we did, I know. It's like, what do we do? So we had this... I think we only maybe got through a page or so. But if there's nothing, I can keep going. Okay, so let's start. So we're on the top of page 66. Remember about Barbara last week? She was hospitalized. And I was teaching you guys about active listening, about how the therapist asked that one question that got into all the reasoning of why. Oftentimes, and then we did that exercise when I said, well, what would you have said if somebody came to Jiva and they're sitting next to you at lunch and they started saying, I'm depressed, I'm this, I'm that. What would you guys say, remember? And everybody had different ideas on what you'd tell them, go on a walk in nature or do kirtan or all these many different ideas, right? Have a sweet, have a cake, many ideas to get out of the depression. But do you remember what the punchline was? About what the theme was in everybody's answer? Does anybody remember? What was it, Vilas? Yes. Giving advice instead of actually really listening to what they're saying. And so that was what I was trying to show, how this therapist, obviously she's trained to do that, but she got much closer to what the problem was. Why, this woman had lost both of her parents, many issues had happened, so that's why she was depressed. But typically in our human relations, oftentimes we don't feel heard by people. We don't really feel heard, because what happens is they just tell you what to do. If you say, I've got a headache, oh, take this medicine. And then you tell someone else, no, I have a headache. No, do this, do that. Everybody's your doctor. Everybody's what you could say, well-wisher, but sometimes it gets a bit much if nobody actually just listens. And what if you say, I have a headache because I haven't slept in 3 days? Oh, you haven't slept, you should do this. Sleep is so important. Ayurveda says, and it's like, but can I tell you why I haven't slept in 3 days? Does anybody care? And it's like nobody really wants to hear your heart, And when you feel really close to somebody, usually it's because either they've shared their heart and you've been a very good listener, or you've shared your heart and they've held the space to hear you, to truly hear you. And then guess what happens? You feel close, but what happens? What's the result? If you feel fully heard and you've shared your heart really, and somebody's asked good questions and they've held the space and they've empathized with you, which means not telling you what to do, just saying, oh, that sounds really hard. Oh, you haven't slept 3 nights because your mother's sick in the intensive care unit? Oh, what happened to her? And they're just listening like that and not giving any advice. What do you think happens to the person who gets to share after they've felt fully heard? What do you think they do? Malika?
Probably they can start thinking of a solution themselves.
Exactly. That's it. That's actually the best way, because they only know themselves. And oftentimes when people are talking to you, they're not telling the whole story of everything going on. So if they're venting to you, it's not that they're saying Everything. Maybe some things are secret and they don't want to share. Maybe some things they feel ashamed about or embarrassed about. So the part that they're willing to tell you, the part that they're willing to open up on, the rest they might be able to figure out on their own if they feel heard, really fully heard. And if you think about in your life, I mean, that happens to me all the time. If somebody's a really good listener, then I'm like, thanks so much for listening. And I know what to do. In my personal experience, my best listener is my mom. She doesn't ever tell me what to do. She always listens, and she'll listen for a long period of time. And she's always happy to do that. So for me, I figure my own thing out after that. Then I'm like, okay, I feel heard. Okay, thank you, bye. Oh, I forgot. How are you? You're good. Okay, bye. No, just kidding. But the idea is that because I feel so relieved and so relaxed and so heard, then my head is clear. And then I'm like, oh, of course I shouldn't do that. I was just angry, or I was just really too tired. Now I know, okay, I should go take a nap. So that's an interesting effect which we don't expect would come. And also, if you think about why it is, if you're in the role of listening to somebody, why you go right into advice mode. Does anybody know why you do that? Just think about yourself. When somebody's complaining to you or something's happening in their life and they're venting, and they probably just want to be heard. They're not looking for the solution. Why do you think that you go right into solution mode and tell them what to do? Why do you think, Ladli?
Because that's uncomfortable for me.
Exactly.
To be with this feeling. I don't want to.
Yeah, and why is that? Go one more. That's true. It's uncomfortable emotionally, right? To hear somebody's heavy feelings coming on you, but why?
Because probably I have the same, and I don't want to have a look at it. I don't want to feel it, and I cannot. I cannot bear it.
So it's actually an issue with ourself. If you could see the part of the equation that's the invisible part, it looks silly. You could make a funny cartoon out of it. Because somebody's coming and saying, I'm so anxious about this and that. But inside your inner child's like, I'm anxious now, And so then you're like trying to tell them what to do without realizing your inner child actually needs that. The part of you that is not healed yet from whatever happened in your childhood, that's the part that needs the thing you're telling you to do. It's a poetic twist in the whole thing, So there's another reason. That's one reason why you yourself have a matching experience, but that you haven't dealt with. Maybe not experience, but set of feelings that you don't know how to deal with yourself. There's another reason why. Similarly related, yes, Yanchi.
Maybe as a child, we were so much accustomed to solve the problem for our mother
That's
or
it.
father.
Yeah. So just say you had a mother who was the permissive type, which means she treats you like a friend. Friend as in, you're my emotional sponge. So let me just dump all my issues on you. Your dad is such a jerk, and I lost my job and I hate cleaning this place, or whatever her issue is, but she's dumping it on you as the kid. Little children, all the way up until 18, basically, you don't have the intelligence. I don't mean you're not smart, but you don't have the emotional maturity to digest other people's feelings. That's actually a large part of what it means to be a kid. You don't know. You don't know how to do that. And you're supposed to learn from how mom does it. But if mom doesn't know how to do that herself, which most moms don't, how are they going to know? We don't have a mothering school or a fathering school, right? So how do you learn? From how you were treated by your parents. So if you don't know as a mom and you think it's normal, your buddy who's your 3-year-old who you're dumping all your feelings on, that's going to actually affect their brain growth, their brain development. Because if you're in a fight or flight response, all those neural networks that need to happen can't grow in the way they need to and make you feel calm and peaceful, So then you develop this set of samskaras where, okay, I need mom's love, but she's not happy. So what I have to do is I have to take care of her. And you're like, okay, mommy, what do I need to do? And then you're going around and you're doing whatever you can. It may be just listening. You may just be listening, or it may be cleaning up because she doesn't want to clean. Maybe she's drunk and you have to, actually cover for that. Kids learn how to cover for the parents, whatever their issue is, because they love the parent no matter what. It doesn't matter how, quote unquote, bad other people might see the parent as. That's their mother. They've got one and only, That's all of our stories, Maybe as an adult you can see differently, but as a kid, we are hardwired to love our moms with the biggest blind spot you could imagine. I don't know if you remember when I taught that in the class, when I taught that first series of classes a few years ago. I forgot the name for it, but there's a biological off switch that science has uncovered now. A biological off switch, particularly related to mother. So literally, the mother can be beating the baby, totally beating the child. And the child's hugging, Mommy, I love you. Because why? That's the survival. They need the breast milk from the mother. They need the touch. The touch actually helps how the brain develop healthy in a healthy way. So that's what I'm saying. But that doesn't change. I mean, so you get all these samskaras made about mother, which in the ideal world of what mother is, it's probably not exactly what most of us had. So then we think that's good. We think it's healthy. We think it's normal. Until we're in our adult life and everything's fine, and then somebody starts coming and complaining to us. And we're like, I just can't stand that person. They're such a whiner. They're such a complainer. Or whatever it is, whoever that person is, it triggers you. If you could make the invisible, unconscious mind of these samskaras visible, you could see. You could actually see, oh, that one. It's that one. And the more you understand your mom, that's why we're doing this, to reflect and go, oh, was my mom like that? Was my dad like that? Then you can start seeing the set of samskaras in you that are affecting how you perceive the people in your life and how you show up in your relationships. So that's why I really stuck on that point last week, because it's very common to give advice instead of just holding the space. But the reason why is very deep. Like you said, it's like, I can't stand it myself. Or, I had to do it for my mom, Or, there's something very deep. It's not a superficial reason why we're giving advice. We're hitting on a deep samskara because it's so automatic. Everybody who was here did it. Every single person gave advice. So where's that coming from? Why can't we just hold the space? So, even Babaji, many of you guys have met with him personally for an issue. Very often he's just listening, right? Even though that's his job. He's guru, so he probably has an answer. But he's holding the space and he's letting you get it all out and he's hearing your thing. If you're going with a personal problem, I know it's different if you're asking a question from Shastra, this or that, he's going to tell you. But if you're going with a personal issue, at least in my experience, except for when he hits me on the head with a frying pan, but which are the stories in my book, but other than that, he just listens. And later on, he might say something in a lecture. I'm like, I know he's talking about me, because he doesn't want to tell me to my face because I'll get triggered. It'll be my ahankara and all my samskaras. I just can't digest it. So he'll say it in some way that you're like, is it me? That couldn't be me. And then it's me, But but I'm saying he's very skillful in that. So he can see the samskaras. He can see our ahankara. So he's holding the space in the most compassionate way you can imagine. That you've probably experienced, where he's not judging, he's not criticizing, he can hold the space. He's not going to be triggered, because he doesn't have all those undigested samskaras. So you can feel the difference with somebody when you have a interaction with Babaji, I'm just giving that as an example, how nice it feels when you feel fully heard, probably when you've talked to him. Then you compare that to how you show up for yourself, to really fully hear yourself. Whatever's going on with you, to really hold the space for yourself and not judge and not criticize and be like, okay, I'm having a hard day. Or for somebody else, It's nice to have a role model in our life for how to do that, right? See, the puppies need to be heard. And Kamala is the puppy whisperer. See? She's right away, she goes, oh, poor babies. Yes, puppy. Yeah, see? And she's attuned. She's going to hear. She'll come back and give us the full story. Okay. So you have any questions about what I shared? Do you guys have any questions about that? It's interesting, isn't it? Any insight? Yes.
So I've heard that men and a woman, they differ in that the woman will tend to be more, emotional. They just want to express themselves. They're not really looking for a solution. And then the guy will tend to.
Yeah.
So in this case, then, is it for men who would tend to kind of give a practical advice or whatever, is it still also related to their own samskara, or just is a biological wiring that male has?
That's a good question. I think it's probably both. We definitely had a set of, because if you're a man and you've been conditioned by your samskaras of what a man is, what man wants to sit around and listen to a woman cry? It's like, oh my God, really. I know, I have a lot of male clients, so don't pretend, I know. So it's like, oh my, just talk to your girlfriends and come back when you're ready to be normal, So that's not how men are wired. That's what I'm saying. I think it's biological too. It's part of the testosterone. It's part of being a man. Even actually women. I'm learning now. I'm reading about menopause. When women get into menopause, they have a lot less estrogen. Estrogen is the female hormone. When that hits rock bottom, watch the Ferrari come out of the garage. Women are more intense. By just with the chemicals. The estrogen goes down and they have more testosterone and they're more like, Yeah, they get more angry. They're having a different. So a lot of it is just the chemicals, But there is also a samskara there, a set of samskaras for men. One is, I'm a man, this is too mushy. What's the point? They want to give the solution, But part of it is also most likely they were treated that way themselves. Like if you were a little boy and when you cried and your mom said it's okay. I know Billy said boys don't cry, but boys do cry. And it's okay for you to have your feelings. And you had a mom who's like attuned to your feelings and you thought it was okay. Probably you'd be a little softer and more emotionally, I don't know what the right word is, but I'm going to say intelligent, but equipped to deal with the woman's feelings. So it's a whole mix. But in general, men give solutions. But in this class, mostly we had women, and every woman gave a solution. Right? So the solution thing is it's like the default, But maybe men would do it more. But I do a lot of couples work too. When I work with couples, I tell the man, now the way I do it is it's not a dialogue. And a lot of couples therapists, it's a dialogue, but they just end up having the same fight. I'm like, why are you paying me to watch you fight? Just forget it. So what I do is I say, one of you gets to talk for the whole hour. That's it. And then we meet next week and the other one talks for the whole hour. And it's a very different experience. And I tell the husband, you have to listen for 1 hour. And get out a pad of paper and take notes verbatim what she says, verbatim. And he's like, what? And then of course he literally starts getting defensive. And I'm like, just read back what she said. He can't do it. He gets defensive. And she does too. They both do it. But this defensiveness, and they're trying to give a solution. And I said, no, all you're trying to do is just understand something you didn't know at the top of the hour. We have 1 hour and try to understand something that you haven't understood yet about her side of this story, So it tends to be more difficult for the man because he's like, I have to listen to her talk about her feelings for an hour and I can't give any advice and I can't defend myself. Right. Try it. Let's see what happens. It's amazing what can happen in 1 hour if you can do that, But yeah, I think it's a mix. Good question. You have a follow-up one to that? Or? No. Okay. Anything else? No? Let's read. Okay. So we left off, so we did a group exercise with that, right? And then I think I left up at the top of 66. So it's the same lady, right, who said she was hospitalized, and she said, why? And that's the point that I stopped and said, look, she said she asked Barbara if something specific had happened, and that's when we got into the story, that both of her parents had died within 3 months. And then she said, oh, it's okay, we hadn't spoken in a few years, so I felt like I'd already lost them. And then she said, I asked her to tell me what had caused this separation. So you see how the therapist is not giving any advice? She just keeps asking more and more questions to let this, that's the therapist's role. And like I said last week, you don't want to do that for every person. There are some people you don't want to know their story. You may have to be living in the community with them or something, but they're not your close friend, and you don't want to keep asking open-ended questions because you'll be there for 3 hours or something. But somebody who you feel close to, somebody who's a close friend, a partner, or somebody who you just want to do a nice seva to and listen to them. You don't have to solve it and you don't have to make it better. You just listen and say, that sounds really tough, So that's the approach if you want to do that. But you have to think consciously, do I want to do that? What's the unintended consequence of doing that? Sometimes you're like, oh, I practiced that new thing I learned where I don't give the solution. And now I have to have dinner with them too. Shoot. And now tomorrow they want to hang out again. It can happen like that because it's such a rare thing to feel fully heard. So be careful when you use that secret weapon, who you use it with, and understand what you might be signing yourself up for. But it can help in very close, intimate relationships, especially if there's you're butting heads. It can really help to just say, hey, you know what? I want to try a new thing. You talk and I listen. And I'm not going to have a response back. I'm just going to try to hear you. It's a very nice way to feel close to somebody. Okay. So now let's go. Okay, so when Chuck and I were planning to get married a little over 4 years ago, my parents insisted on coming and staying with us, right? I read all that, right? About how and then that's how it ended. Remember? The mom said she'll never talk to her again. And then the mom died. Didn't even tell her she was dying. And she found out later, right? Every time I think, I'm just skimming a little to see exactly where I left if I didn't make a note. So every time I think of them, I hear him accusing me, and it makes me feel like a murderer. They're still strangling me with their accusations, even though they're both 6 feet under. I think I read up to that. What does it take to get them out of my head, out of my life? Like Eli, Barbara was being controlled from the grave. She spent several years feeling responsible for killing her parents, which devastated her mental health and almost destroyed her marriage. She became desperate to escape her sense of guilt. So now I'm at the top of 67. Since they died, I've been very suicidal. It seemed like the only way to stop those voices in my head that kept saying, "You killed your father, you killed your mother." I was so close to killing myself. But you know what kept me from doing it? I shook my head. She smiled for the first time during our hour together, and she replied, "Oh my God, I was afraid I might run into my parents again." Oh my God. She didn't kill herself because she was afraid she'd have a worse hell than the voices in her head, that she'd actually run into them again, she'd see them again. Oh my God. It was bad enough that they ruined my life here on earth. I wasn't about to give them a chance to destroy whatever I might find on the other side. Oh my God. Like most adult children of toxic parents, Barbara was able to acknowledge some of the pain her parents had caused her. But that wasn't enough to help her transfer her feelings of responsibility from herself to them. It took some doing, but we finally worked through it together, and she came to accept her parents' full responsibility for their cruel behavior. Her parents were dead, but it took Barbara another year before she could get them to leave her alone. That's very interesting. So that's the power of a samskara, you know? That's what was in her head. That was them, you know, their voices, their guilt and all that. And a year is very fast to get out of that. I'm surprised that she could get out of it in 1 year, you know? If any of you guys have done that work and you have some trouble from your parents in your childhood, it takes years. I mean, to really go at the level of nurturing your inner, first of all, you have an inner child, and then what the heck do you do with the inner child? And then, oh, how do you mother? And then how do you father? This is all, it's like a whole school of years of that. So she probably got some relief, but I'm not sure she fully digested all that. That's hard to do all that in a year. But the main point is that you're this idea that the main point I wanted to say was that if, you know, I've had clients who've been suicidal before, and if this idea that if you kill yourself, those voices are going to go away, that's not true. Because in Vedic psychology, you know, whatever you die with in terms of the samskaras you have, they go with you to the next life. So whatever you're doing now, plus the karma you get for killing yourself also. So just say your parents, you know, their voices in your head, she probably would get those parents again with the same stuff and have to work through it again. So it's like, or get somebody who acts like that, who makes her feel like that, you know. And definitely those voices, those are samskaras, those are in your subtle body. So only you're dropping the physical body, you know. So the suicide is like not a good option, you know. The better option is to learn how to work through those samskaras in here and now. And that's also what can be motivating. What we can take away from it is that it's very motivating for us to say, okay, I have this set of samskaras. These certain ones are troubling me. Now I can identify those and work through them and heal them, so I don't have to take them with me, because it will determine your next birth. Well, if you're walking around tamas, then you're going to get in all tamasic samskaras, you know. Or if you're walking around pissed off at your mother or grieving over your father or whatever it is, and it's not dealt with, you know, the time does not heal all the wounds, you know. Babaji says time doesn't heal all the wounds, it only conceals them, it just covers them. So we have to do the deep digging and say, what's bothering me? And it's a wonderful way to learn it is the human relationships you're in right now. You know, who is it that you really don't like, that upsets you? Who is it that you really like? They both are samskaras, you know. Who is it who makes you anxious? Who is it that you admire? It doesn't matter, but you know, if there's no samskara there for that type of person, that means they're not bringing up anything in you. That's a good sign. Then you can just be equanimous, equal to everybody, neutral, kind of equal. But if someone's making you up and someone's making you down and someone's making you scared and those are all samskaras. So it's a good way to figure out what samskaras you have. Whatever ones are triggering you. Vilas? Oh, sorry. Okay. Anything about that, Kamala? Would you want to give us a report about the puppies? The puppy whisperer, anything?
He got stuck in the gate because he wanted to come out at any cost, and he got stuck.
Oh.
So yeah. Crying.
Was he trying to get near his mommy?
No, they just want to go and explore.
Oh,
Anyway, tomorrow they will go to Bagicha.
okay.
So no more
They'll
disturbance.
get a new home at the garden.
Yeah, sorry for the disturbance.
Okay.
No, it was very, I mean, it's not the first time that I hear that, but my question is more, if we focus on something that trigger us, okay, in a person, let's say, this means that I have that particular samskara in me, or how I can dig in myself to understand why a particular behavior of a particular person I like it and another particular person I don't like it, something.
Yeah, right. Maybe write about it first. Specifically, when this person, they do this thing, it bugs me, you know. And very many samskaras are going to tie right back to mom or dad.
Okay.
But there's different types of samskaras, you know. So you have to see, like, okay, do you have the exact match? Do you have that in you? Or do you have some way that you learn to relate to a person like that? That's what I was saying. It could be that you yourself are anxious, or it could be that your mother was anxious and you had to learn how to deal with that. There's something, but to find out which exact one it was. Or it could be that one I always tell about my father, like, you know, I was not an athlete, but he was. So because his father never came to his sports games, you know, he came to every one. I'm like, it's annoying to me. I don't even want to be here. And you're running up and down cheering for me. You're cheering for your inner child. Mm-hmm. I didn't know it when I was 18, but that's what was happening. Mm-hmm. He needed his dad to be there saying, "Go, yay, you hit the ball, good job," you know. But he's doing it for me. That's what I'm saying. It looks so silly. It looks so silly when you can see the samskaras and be like, he was running up and down the field, you know. So it's like a compensatory samskara, you could call it. His lack of makes him overdo. That's one type. So you have to see are you overdoing it in a relationship? Are you overgiving to somebody? And did you find is that what you had to do to keep your mom happy? So you have to see the exact thing. But to know a person triggers you means that you're not in balance in that relationship. You're giving too much, or you're too anxious, you're too angry, you're jealous, you're fearful. There's something going on where you're not peaceful with them. It's two. Or you're holding back, you know. Then you know, okay, that must be some samskara. And if it's with a woman, I would try to figure out, could this relate to my mom? And some people had some other motherly figure in their life, like a grandmother that was also really important, or an aunt, or older sister. So you have to try to see who it could be, but try to figure out in yourself first what it is that's bothering you. Then you can say, is this the first time this has ever happened? I've ever felt like that, you know, or no. And then you can go, oh, it was like so-and-so, you know. It's a good question. Anything else? Good? Let's keep going. Okay. So, so that was our friend Barbara. So now there's a new section at the bottom of 67 called No Separate Identity. Parents who feel good about themselves do not have to control their adult children. But the toxic parents we've met in this chapter operate from a deep sense of dissatisfaction with their lives and a fear of abandonment. The child's independence is like the loss of a limb to them. That's interesting, isn't it? As the child grows older, it becomes ever more important for the parent to pull the strings that keep the child dependent. As long as toxic parents can make their son or daughter feel like a child, they can maintain control. And this particular paragraph that I just read, Babaji had highlighted when he read this book. So I think he must have thought that was very important. So it's about basically parents manipulating the children, right? Controlling them because they have a deep fear of, at the root, abandonment. So what they've most likely done is enmeshed with the child. It's like, I don't know where you end and I began. That's the permissive parents often do that, you know? The friend, you're my friend, you're my buddy, you're mommy's little helper, daddy's little helper, whatever, something like that. So your identity is like, they said you're like a limb of your parent. So now when you start growing up and getting your independence, the parent doesn't like that. So they'll do things to try to control, to try to keep you close. And that's what I think she's saying so far in this chapter, what it's been. And this last sentence was really interesting. As long as the toxic parents can make their son or daughter feel like a child, you know? Some of these stories, you remember, like the mom's, that guy who couldn't get married and he was in his 40s or something, you know? And then like the mom has to clean someone's apartment, like all these things where you can't have your own life They make you feel like you can't do it. Maybe you're too afraid to leave home, or too afraid to go to a school you want to go to, or be in a relationship you want to be in. They make you question yourself so you can be small and be with them, because they're too afraid to actually be on their own. They don't know how, they'd feel abandoned by you. And underneath the abandonment is probably a very deep sense of loneliness. Who am I without my son or daughter? As a result, adult children of controlling parents often have a very blurred sense of what? Identity. So this is when we get into Swabhava land, right? Swabhava. What is your God-given gift? What is your natural talent? You see those children, prodigies, they're 3 years old and they're like playing the instruments and stuff, or they're dancing, they're doing something amazing and they're so young. You can tell like they were just born that way. Those are rare cases, but the truth is we all have that. We all have something we're very gifted at that nobody else has in that unique way. We all have it, but to the extent that our parents saw it is to the extent that we know it ourselves. To the extent that our mom and our dad saw it and they validated in us, is to the extent that we were able to see it. Unless you've maybe worked with a therapist or done some work to really figure out who am I and what am I really good at. Because you could be really good at something and not even realize it. And other people will all see it and be like, oh yeah, she's so good at that. But you might not see it because your mom and dad have to tell you, that's your thing. Wow, you are so good at that, But why would they want to do that? Why would they want to have you be good at something if it takes time away from them? They don't want you to have your own identity unless they can somehow be that too. Somehow if they're related to that identity, like if together you take dance class, just say, or if you're an artist, together you're artists or something, or you're the mother of that artist, but somehow if their identity is separate from yours, that's going to be a threat. So they may see it and they may not want to promote that, or they may feel jealous of that. We'd read about that, right? Parental jealousy. So that's also a tricky one. Like they see it, but they're like, she's better than me at that, or he's better than me at that. Like that's not fair. I want to be that, So there's lots of ways they're only human, and they're doing their best. It's not that they probably didn't sit down and read the whole Toxic Parents and analyze it all. So I'm not trying to pick on the parents, I'm just trying to help you see what might have got put into you and why you can't. If you're struggling with an issue of who am I, what is my identity? What am I really good at? What lights me up? I'm not sure. Or maybe you feel guilty to even admit it. What would that look like if I actually just went for that full blast? What would that look like? How guilty would I feel? Who would I have to, quote unquote, betray? Everyone's expecting me to be like this, I mean, for me, I was a businesswoman before I got into this whole world, And why did I do that? Why would I be a CEO of a company and go get an MBA and do all that stuff? It's not actually my nature. I don't love that. I did it because my father was like, yes, business. Yeah, you do it. Come on. And I'm like, first I had to play soccer for you, and now I have to, what did I get my undergraduate degree in? Psychology. What did I specialize in? Children. That's what I love, even in my teens, I was studying children, early childhood development. And after 5 years, I was busting my hump in that school, and I graduated. My father said, you shouldn't be a psychologist. I was applying for master's programs. I want to be, even then, I was like 21. And he told me, you shouldn't be a psychologist. I'm like, I just spent all this time. I got the degree. I love it, And he said, no, not for you. And I said, why? And he said, because you're going to get depressed. And I said, why would I get depressed? He goes, you're going to sit around, people are going to come at the worst time of their life, and they're going to dump all their problems on you, and you do that 5 days a week. You think you're going to be happy about life? You're going to go into a depression. And I'm like, how do you know? He goes, because I did it. My undergraduate degree, my father, was psychology. And I said, oh. And I chose to become an engineer when I understood what the track looked like. And I'm like, well, I definitely don't have an engineer's brain. That's not for me. That is not going to, I didn't get past algebra, so I really don't get the geometry thing and all that. No, and he was like, no, but so what I'm saying is, so his identity was so strong that he steamrolled me. So actually, I think I was 22 by that point. I was applying to get my master's in psychology. and I wanted to get a PhD, and I was young, but I was sure, and he said no. And I'm like, oh, but what should I do? I mean, I just graduated. I just dedicated 5 years of my life. And he said, you're good with people. Go work at a hotel. With no background in hotels and no interest really. But because I really trusted my dad a lot, I did it. All my friends graduated and they got good jobs in the fields they wanted. And I went and worked at a hotel. I wore the little uniform like, hello, your room number 314. Thank you. Would you like some biscuits with your coffee? Like it was... And that's what I did. And it was like soul deadening. It was so depressing, And yeah, that's what I did. And I wore the little outfit and I was like, welcome to the Palm Court Hotel. How can I help you? There's 36 rooms. I won't forget it, It was, that's what I did, So no psychology, no working with people. And I thought, he cheated me, really, because this isn't a people job. I was like a donkey. I was like a monkey. I was just like, beep, boop, here's your room key, And I'm bad with those kind of details, I'm bad with that type of thing. I want to go deep into why it is that you and your wife are fighting as you're checking in. That's interesting to me. And why you left the baby in the car. Do you know that baby's hurting now? Come, bring the baby here. Like, that's what I was into, The psychology behind it, the depth. And I went and got the most superficial job, It was so bad. So that's what I'm saying. My dad's identity was so strong that he made me be a soccer player. I'll never forget. I'm actually like, because he did that to me, you know how I said you have a samskara that overreacts to the one that was a bad negative one? So my negative one is, that's not my nature. I'm not jumping, running. I'm not a vata type, as you can tell, I'm not built like a vata, right? And I can sit for many hours and I like that. So because he forced it on me to be so athletic, I have an aversion to exercise now. So my reaction is, I don't ever want to go on another run again. Ever. And I grew up in a place like you, it's cold and snowy and icy. And my dad in January would be like, come on, let's go on a run. This is the best. And it'd be like below zero, snowing and ice. And I'm like, what the hell is your problem? I'm watching TV. I'm snuggling on the couch, watching a movie with my mom. We're drinking hot chocolate. I don't want to go on a run. And he'd be like, come on. This is what character's made out of. This is what good, strong characters. And I'm like, don't give me a lecture now. And he'd be like, come on, get your shoes on. Let's go. And he'd be like jumping and stretching. He's vata type. So he's jumping and stretching and bouncing around in the room. And I'm like, oh my God. He's like, you're not going to make the team. You're not going to make the team. I'm like, it's August is the tryouts. It's January. You got to train all year round. That's how the best are, that's how the best are made. And I'm like, it was just speaking Chinese to me, so out of guilt, I would go. And then he would take me right outside of our house was a hill that was like this. Oh my! It was called King Hill. King, like it was like a king, like you could not. And I'm like slipping and crying up the hill, and he's like, "Come on!" And he's in my ear going, "You can do it! Come on, Jess! Come on! Push harder now! Dig in deep! Dig in deep!" Do you see what I mean? That's what he needed from his father. That's his total father. He was blind as a bat about me. What did I like to do out of any sport? I liked swimming. Why? Because you're like a swan in the water. I was like, oh, I don't want to compete. As soon as he got in the water, he's like, let's race. I'm like, I don't want to race. I just want to float in the water. So it's just not my personality at all, So that's my point. If your parent doesn't know their identity, it's very hard to see who you are, especially if you're a more delicate type. You just get flattened, like a pancake. Yeah, so I'd be running up the hill, slipping and sliding and snowing, and it was horrible. And he's like, yeah, you can do it. Come on. This is what it's made. This is what grit is made out of. It'll pay. In August, when you're doing the tryouts, you'll see. So I was just getting dragged through life really by him. Because for all the stuff he couldn't be. And I'm the firstborn, so he's dumping it on me. Now it doesn't matter if you're not a boy. I don't care if I got a boy or a girl. I don't even care if I get a turtle. It doesn't matter what comes out. You are going to be my, so I was like a soccer player, which I felt like a imposter, really. I was just like, and then I remember when I didn't make the varsity team, I was like, yes, and my dad's like, how did you not make the team? And I'm like, well, the coach asked me, am I good enough? And I said, I don't think so. Can I go home? That's what I'm saying. You can't make somebody be someone they're not. Right? You can't. And so that's this whole identity thing. That's why I studied for my whole PhD, for my whole dissertation. The whole thing was about Swabhava. That's why I got so into it, because when I realized, oh, wait, we're all somebody, and it's not who our dad tells us we are. Cool. Who am I? What am I actually good at? What's my inborn talent? What's my identity outside of him? And it's so powerful when you drop that stuff and just slip into like who you are. So that's the power of that. Anyway, that's why I don't like to exercise much, in case any of you wanted to ever know. Okay. So they had the blurred sense of identity. They have trouble seeing themselves as separate beings from their parents. They can't distinguish their own needs from their parents' needs, and they feel powerless. All parents control their children until those children gain control of their own lives. In normal families, the transition occurs soon after when? Adolescence. I didn't even come into my own till my dad died. That's how strong he was. When I was 30 years old and he died, and then I went to therapy, because I was grieving his loss, losing him, because he was such a strong power in my life, He was really controlling my whole life, and I didn't know who I was, what I want. I was I remember my therapist said, I'm very sorry, I know you're sad that your father died, but you're free now. You're free. And that didn't feel very good to me at the time. I'm free, but I don't know what to do. He tells me what to do. And I was 30. I don't know which way to move, or actually who I am or what I'm good at. I was doing everything for him, But she told me it's blessing in disguise, Now I understand that. He didn't have to die for that to happen, but I understand what she meant. That I could find my own way now and not have to just do what he's saying, So all parents control their children until those children gain control of their own lives. In normal families, the transition occurs soon after adolescence. In toxic families, this healthy separation is delayed for years or forever. It can only occur after you have made the changes that will enable you to gain mastery over your own life. So that's a hard thing. If you've been conditioned to see yourself in a certain way, to get love in a certain way, whatever role you're playing in your family, and then all of a sudden you bust out and go in a different direction, there can be a lot of shame, a lot of guilt, a lot of you second-guessing yourself. I shouldn't do that. I should really be a good girl or a good boy and do what mom wants or dad wants. And it may not be specifically about your swabhava. It may be about how you have to show up for them. You need to be there for the holidays, or you need to live near me, or, it just depends on your relationship with your parent, what it is that they programmed into you, What do you guys think? That's the end of this chapter. Woo, have we made through three chapters? Okay. What do you guys think about that? Did anything come up for you?
So, Bhagavati, have a question. That what happened when we trigger the samskaras of another person that don't like us? What does that implies for us to work on or to observe? When we trigger.
Yeah, if we trigger. So how do you realize that you've triggered someone?
Because the person feeling comfortable with my presence. As soon as the person sees me, I can perceive that the person feels uncomfortable. Or so how we can work with that samskara mutually, or if it's
Probably it may not be mutual, because they might not even be aware, or they might not want to admit it that they don't like you. And if you're like, hey, I noticed you're triggered and you're uncomfortable, can we work through that? They'll be like, whoa, it's a little bit much, right? Unless it's like your husband or wife or very close friend or something, daughter or son, then you could. But if it's somebody just in, loose relation, it would be considered like a boundary issue, or crossing their boundary, or it's invasive. It's like saying, hey, why don't you pull your pants down? It's very ooh, you're exposing me. You feel exposed, So if you realize that you make somebody uncomfortable, then what you can do is just attune to them, and not, if it's because you're around them, then try not to stay around them. But don't come more pressing on them. You can be polite, Haribol, smile, but don't keep coming around them, There's something going on within them, and they may never get over it. They may always think that way, but it's not our job to change somebody else's mind. If they're on the spiritual path and they're trying to do their sadhana and do their all the bhakti practices or whatever path they're on, if they're working on themselves, then they can eventually maybe see that. But our job is to stay in control of our own self and say, okay, I'm making that person uncomfortable. And then introspect and think, yeah, some people make me uncomfortable too. How would I like it if that person who makes me uncomfortable, what would I like that they do? Probably give me some space. You know? If there's somebody who every time you're around, like, this person talks too much or complains too much or this is a know-it-all person, you probably like it if they quiet down and give you space. Then that's what I would probably do, you know. And then you can see. Maybe they'll start liking you more if you just back off a little. Right? Good question. Anything else? Nothing? Nothing? Good. Good job. Okay, you guys, so thank you for being here.